Okay. Alrighty, let's get going. Making progress slowly but surely in the Sermon on the Mount. We are still commenting on verses 6 to 9 around the top of page 4. Got papers? Top of page 4, letter Q. Letter Q. So again, just for review, we're talking about the end of the Beatitudes here. Blessed are the pure in heart, and blessed are the peacemakers, and all that. That's what we're yakking about. It's if you want the reference, it's Matthew 5, again 6 through 9. Page 1506, if you're looking for the page. So the Jews were longing for the Messiah to lead them to war, to conquer all the Gentiles, especially the hated Romans, and rule the world. So they weren't looking just to get rid of the Romans. That was not their main idea. The main idea was they would become top dog in the whole world, like they were back in the days of David and Solomon. Okay, that's something that people forget. You remember, they just wanted to throw the Romans out. No, they didn't want to throw the Romans out. They wanted to replace the Romans with themselves. Much bigger ambition, folks. Much bigger ambition. And of course, if you've got the Son of God or God coming and rescuing you from your enemies, you would have much bigger ambitions than simply no longer being a colony of Rome. Okay, so that's something we have to remember. Their visions of grandeur were quite large. Okay? Still are. Theirs was merely an earthly peace, to live without anyone over them. But peace is more than a passive existence. It is a positive state of being and doing good. The peacemaker is more than one who stops quarrels. Notice the word, peacemaker, not peace haver. Blessed, not blessed is the peace haver, somebody who just has peace. Blessed is the peacemaker, someone who specifically seeks to cause others to have peace. Right? A peacemaker is one who more than stops quarrels. He brings good into people's lives. A peacemaker might also become involved in conflicts. As long as the forces of evil prevails, there is no way to have peace except by destroying them. Okay. You have to eliminate the enemy in some way. Peacemakers deal with the corrupt, the evildoers, so that there can be a real state of peace. Jesus was fighting against the corrupted religious system and for peace between man and God. This is the real deal. This is what is so misunderstood in the Christmas message. Peace on earth, goodwill to men. It's peace on earth, but it's peace on earth between man and God, between humans and God. That's the kind of peace on earth the angels were talking about. That's the kind of peace on earth that Jesus brings up until the last day. Then, of course, when he comes on the last day, he brings permanent peace, total peace, and that's between really everybody. I mean, think of it this way. The people in hell, all right, they themselves don't have any peace, okay, as long as they're there forever. But there is peace in the sense of there's no more conflict. They can't make any trouble for anybody. They can't cause any upheaval anymore. Their evil is contained. Okay? The real peace can never be found in a compromise with evil. We know this from history. Every time you compromise with wrong, falsehood, evil, lies, whatever, however you want to fill in the blank, whenever you compromise with anything less than 100% truth, it does not work out. It may for a time. There may be a kind of peace for a short time, or maybe even for a longer time. But in the end, the compromise will come back and bite you in the butt. Compromise will collapse. Okay? So our political system is based on compromise. That's what it's based on. Okay? Democracy, Republican democracy, representative democracy is based on compromise. You have to get anything done, you have to compromise with falsehood. You have to. Right? There's no two ways about it. You have to. No matter what. I mean, go all the way back to before the war between the states. Those various agreements between the North and the South, what were they called? Anybody? It was called the Missouri Compromise, the Kansas Compromise, and so on and so forth. And so, if you believed that slavery was absolutely, totally, always, in every case wrong, but you compromised and said, well, the states below this such line here can have it if they want, what are you doing? You're just putting off the inevitable, right? On the other hand, if you believe without any doubt whatsoever that your state is sovereign and that the United States is a group of plural republics. In other words, each state is sovereign on its own, and so when you speak of the United States, you speak the United States are. Look in the bills that were passed in those years up until 1865. United States is always spoken of in the plural. United States are. After 1865, you began to see, and now that's all you see, the United States is. It was not founded in the singular. Look at the Declaration of Independence. Look at the Constitution. Look at the Bill of Rights. Look at any document talking about the United States before 1865. It's United States are, not United States is. So, if you believe that, but you say, well, we'll abide by what Washington tells us in this case, you have compromised. And therefore, eventually, what's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to have conflict, and the conflict is going to explode. Okay? And so, we should not be surprised that we have, over the last few decades, especially since the end of the Second World War, we should not be surprised that government is working or functioning less and less and less and less, because compromise becomes more and more and more difficult. You've already compromised on a whole lot of things. Okay? If you wanted to have true peace, guess where there's true peace?
When you destroy the enemy.
When you destroy the enemy. Guess what nation within its borders had true peace in the 1930s?
Texas.
What nation? What nation in the world had real peace in the 1930s? I suppose. Switzerland, yeah, I suppose you could say that. Germany. There were no race riots in Germany. There were no union riots. There were no labor riots. Everything ran very smoothly. Why? Because the Nazis outlawed all the other political parties. What's one of the things they complain about in Russia right now and have complained about for a long time? All kinds of turmoil, all kinds of upheaval. You didn't have upheaval when the Soviet Union was existing and they had the communists running everything. You don't have upheaval, you don't have instability when one side has eliminated all of the opponents. Right? That is the blessing, if you will, you want to use that word, that's the blessing of dictatorship. That's the blessing of, why do you suppose that no matter how hard the media emphasize Mr. Trump's comment about being a dictator for a day, and they misquote it very often, saying, I'm just going to be a dictator. Why do you suppose his poll numbers go up? Why? Because deep down inside, we all know that things would probably work a lot better if one guy was calling the shots. I think we all know that, don't we?
From the beginning of time.
It's always been the way. Always. Now, of course, what happens? These people that call the shots, these dictators, these tyrants, of course, they get real big heads. They overstep, like Hitler invading Russia. They do stupid, dumb things. They're never satisfied with what they have. They always want more. That's a problem when you got one guy running stuff. Is 9 times out of 10, they go haywire. They go fruity, and they cause, in the end, they cause a lot of conflict. So peacemaker, folks, peacemaker is to eliminate conflict. And you can eliminate conflict by convincing everybody that you're right. That's not real likely. Or you can eliminate conflict by eliminating the people who think wrong. Those are the two ways that you can do it. You either convert them to your side or you eliminate them. That gets rid of conflict. Okay? What Jesus wants to do and what we want to do, because obviously eliminating people is against the commandments, is against God's will, we want to convert people. That's what we want to do. We want to convert people. But at the same time, understand that they want to convert us. Because this is also true on the other side. This is why compromise never works. Because in the end, one side or the other gets tired of compromise. They get tired of compromise and they would just want to have the other side say, you're right. Either say you're right or go away, or I will take you away. Okay? That's the way of the world, all right? And Jesus knows that. And so he's telling us, blessed are those who can eliminate conflict and do it in a way that's pleasing to God. And the only way to eliminate conflict in a way that's pleasing to God is to convert others to the truth. That's a very difficult task. And anybody who attempts that Anybody who tries to do that, anybody who works at that, is, Jesus says, blessed. Blessed. Yeah. There can never be a peaceful coexistence with sin. I mean, you can say to people, okay, I agree that your life has dignity. You can say that to a homosexual. You can say that to a trans person. You can say, well, I believe you deserve to live as much as anybody else. Okay, I can agree with that. But I can't agree with your lifestyle. I can't compromise with sin. I can't compromise with falsehood. So, what's what we're called to do? We're called to eliminate that conflict. But we're called to eliminate that conflict in a God-pleasing way, which means we don't eliminate the people. Okay? The basic problem with people that destroys peace is that they need to be reconciled to God. You're never going to stop abortions. Never. Unless all of the people are converted to God's will. You can pass all the laws you want. You can pass a constitutional amendment against abortion. Okay? You can make the laws as tough as possible. You can make them like they were back in the 20s and 30s. Did that stop abortions in the 20s and 30s? No, most certainly did not. Has the reversal of Roe versus Wade over the last year stopped abortions? No, of course not. It's actually increased them. So this again just proves that our whole political system is built on a lie. The whole idea of democracy or representative democracy is a false dream. It's the pie in the sky idea that will never work, ever. It's like Winston Churchill said, it is a very flawed system. But it's the system we have. And is better in many regards than other systems. But we should understand that it may be better, and that's fine, but it's still inherently flawed. And the people that get all upset right now at Congress, because Congress is constantly at a standstill, because you have a whole lot of people on the ideological right who refuse to compromise, and now you also have a whole lot of people on the ideological left who refuse to compromise. In America, as in general, the population is more and more and more and more isolated into one or the other. And so, what does that produce? That produces quagmire, stalemate. It produces no activity, which some of us would say that's good. I love those words. Those words are music to my ears when I read them or hear them. Congress is on vacation. Good. Let them stay on vacation. Congress on vacation is great. All right? Why do you suppose it is? Why do you suppose it is that in every state in the Union, it used to be, and even in Washington, D.C., it used to be that Congress only showed up, or that the legislatures only showed up for a very short period of time?
That's the way it was meant. They went back to the farm.
Well, yeah, they went back to the farm, or they went back to their jobs. They had other jobs, okay? You didn't go to Washington to stay for the whole year. You know, when Davy Crockett was elected to Congress, he went to Congress. He spent about 6 weeks there or whatever. He went back to Kentucky. And then he went back to Washington for another session. I forget how long that was, and went back to Kentucky. That's what you did. That's what you did. And most of the people in the government had small little apartments or stayed in a hotel room or something. Now, you look at these people, like John McCain, for example, who represented this area for a long, or not John McCain, our member, brother, thank you, he had a big house. I think it was in Georgetown area. He had a big house there. He lived there more of the time than he lived here. And that's the case nowadays. Okay? So you know, the problem is you have dysfunction, and you have these people causing the dysfunction, and they're not going to change. They're not going to change, folks. And if you think for 1 minute that, you know, you're going to change them, you got another thing coming. They are what they are. And a politician is just that. That's his business. That's his job. Used to be in the old days, they were other things. They were mechanics, they're entrepreneurs, insurance salesmen, you know, whatever. And then they did this on the side. But they don't do that anymore. They live on this. And so they like to have this constant upheaval. And they like to go and they like to say, here, we're doing something for you. Well, you should ask, are you making peace? Are you converting others to your way? If not, you're no good to me. If you're just making compromise after compromise after compromise after compromise, eventually it's going to blow up in your face. Okay? Like it did in 1861. Moving on. Last comment on this section. Called means chosen to be. Children means sons. A good translation would be, they shall be chosen as sons of God. Okay, so we're referring here, the end of verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. No, bad translation. Bad translation. And every translation does it wrong. I think because they want to make it sound poetic. No, they shall be chosen as God's children, as God's sons, as God's inheritors. They shall be chosen. The peacemakers, the ones who want to convert others to God's way, are themselves believers, and therefore they are chosen as children of God. Much better translation. Would not give so much of false ideas to people. God is the one who initiated peace with mankind. It wasn't the other way around, by the way. Remember, who went looking for who in the garden? Did Adam and Eve go looking for God? No. God came looking for them. Did God know they had already sinned? Of course. But he came looking for them anyway. Notice that. God knew they had fallen away, and he still went looking for them. Who ran away from God? They did. Who tried to hide from God? They did. Who lied to God? They did. God didn't lie to them. God didn't run away from them. God didn't try to hide from them. They did. And yet God still provided them with the plan of salvation. We should have this same desire. When Jesus comes again to earth, he will be called the Prince of Peace, it says in Isaiah 9. Even within our own lives, God will never make a pact with sin. Sins must be dealt with. Sins must be dealt with, folks. Now, you can say that they have already been dealt with on the cross, and that is true. That takes away the eternal consequences, if you believe. But that does not remove the temporal or physical or worldly consequences. They may not always be physical, but there's going to be consequences. That's how God deals with sin. He allows the consequences. Now, he doesn't allow all the consequences. If God allowed all the consequences of all our sins to come down on us, we would not live more than 1 second, if that. We would be squished like a bug one moment after our conception. So he only allows the consequences of our sins in a very small, tiny, tiny percentage of our sins to affect us negatively. Okay. Most of the time, he keeps the consequences away. Most of the time, he does not allow the consequences to take their full effect. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he allows the consequences to take full effect, or sometimes he allows the consequences to take a small effect. Or maybe he allows the consequences to take effect over a long period of time. Okay. But Paul said in Galatians, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked." You know how it ends? Whatever a man sows, that shall he reap. Okay. So what you reap, that is the consequences of sin, right? That is your harvest. But God controls the harvest as to how detrimental it is. Okay? So you don't reap for every sin you sow, luckily. And you don't reap completely for even those that you do suffer from sowing. Okay, I think we have an incorrect idea of grace. We tend to think of grace as maybe a one-shot deal, or maybe a once in a while kind of deal. And every once in a while, God gives us grace. Every once in a while, God blesses us with something. No. We should think of it the opposite. Okay. As long as we're breathing in and out, we have grace. We have grace at every tick of the clock. Grace, 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 grace. Now, when the doctor comes in and says, "Ooh, that's a nasty spot on your lungs," okay, that's a little tiny shred of the consequences of living in an evil world and ourselves being sinners. Okay? When the doc says, like a couple years ago, he said, "Well, that's a nasty mole on your face. We got to take care of that." Okay? Put a couple stitches in there, hack around on my face a little bit. Okay. Tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of consequence for, telling my mother to go take a flying leap when she said, "Make sure and put your sunscreen on." See? Now, by all rights, I should have been dead a long time ago. We used to go swimming in the canals when I was a kid. We were swimming in the canals. We didn't take no bathing suit. We're out there in our birthday suits in 120 degrees and the sun shining like crazy. And then lay down on the bank and just soak in the sun.
Yeah.
I should have cancer all over myself. But I don't. Okay? Some people do. So again, folks, this idea is we're chosen people of God, and because we're chosen people of God, we do not suffer the full and complete consequences of our sin. And let's say, okay, we sin less maybe than other people. Okay, I'm not sure that's true, but let's just say that just for sake of argument. Okay, It still wouldn't make any difference. So I again, that's why I wish these translations wouldn't try to be so poetic. It's poetry in Greek and it's poetry in Hebrew. It's not always going to be poetry in English. And if it is poetry in English, sometimes the inference is wrong. Okay? All right. Ready to move on? Mm-hmm. Let's go on to the next section then, starting with verse 10. We'll go down the next 3 verses. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you. Notice what at the ending there, because of me. Not because you're stupid, not because you offended them, not because you said something dumb, but because of Jesus. Right? Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. In other words, this has always been the case, folks. If you get tired of the fact that you are right according to God, but 99% of the world out there disagrees with you, you get tired of that, tough rocket ships. I'm sorry for you. I get tired of it too. But it's the price you pay for being a true child of God. It's the price you pay for being a true believer. And it's always, always, always going to be that way. We have been fortunate in this country. We have been very fortunate in this country up to now. The country saw itself, the society saw itself as God-believing, God-fearing. Whether it was or not is another story. But they saw that it was popular to do that. What do you suppose would happen today? Let's say today that President Biden submitted or asked Congress, or somebody in Congress with his guidance, submitted a bill to put In God We Trust on our money today. What do you suppose would happen? It wouldn't even get out of committee. It would probably be laughed off the floor. And yet, back in the 50s, the whole country thought that was a great idea. Or how about adding the words under God in the Pledge of Allegiance? Wasn't there before.
They don't even use that whenever someone's in court in their...
No. But imagine somebody saying in Congress today, standing up and saying, Mr. Speaker, I move that we add the words under God to the Pledge of Allegiance. Of course, most of the people in Congress are going to say, Pledge of Allegiance? What's that? I never heard of that before. What is that? I don't know what you're talking about. But imagine, the guy would get laughed right off the floor. But our society felt at the time when we were under the threat of Russian bombers and everybody was practicing duck and cover drills, we all felt like we need God on our side. Okay? And those godless atheist commies, we got to show God we're on his side. So maybe he'll be on our side. So anything we can do to add God into stuff, we're going to do. Okay? So we've been lucky. We've been very fortunate that from the beginning of the country, pretty much all the way through till then, till the 50s, into the 60s, this was the thinking of society. Society was afraid. Society was petrified of the A-bomb, and the Russian A-bomb especially. And so they were doing whatever they could do to say, hey, we're good with God. God is good with us. God's on our side. Yeah. But then, of course, you had the Cold War, détente, and you had mutual assured destruction, and people began to feel pretty confident, pretty like, well, we're okay. Nothing's going to happen. We had all kinds of things go on. Vietnam happened, Korea first, and Vietnam, whatever. Gee, and the A-bombs didn't fly. Well, that's kind of interesting. Should have, maybe. Could have, easily, but didn't. I guess we're okay. Thanks a lot, God. Don't need you anymore. We're good to go. Call you next time when we need you. When the Martians show up or whatever. Yeah. So the persecution has been held off for a long time. You could say since Constantine, really. Since Constantine legalized Christianity and then made it the official religion of the Roman Empire, and then every country after that, every empire after that made Christianity their official religion, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. And even though the United States didn't make it an official religion, it was kind of understood. That's what we are. Yeah, we're kind of Christian. We're kind of biblical. Okay, and so from the 300s to today, we've been very fortunate. We've been very fortunate. But if the world lasts another 1,000 years, and frankly, I don't think it will, but if it does, if the world lasts another 1,000 years, I guarantee you, your great-grandchildren will be going to church in a cave or a catacomb, or I don't know, certainly in a basement or a living room somewhere. We won't see buildings like this anymore. Buildings like this will go away. Unless, of course, you want to compromise. If you want to compromise, that's fine. If you want to make sure, your pastor can be lesbian, your pastor can be trans, whatever. Your pastor can, go along with any kind of sin of society. Then, you can still have a building. But that's all. Anybody else? No. Okay. And you see that already starting in Canada and in Western Europe, where Orthodox, conservative Christians are not really appreciated. No thanks. We don't really care for you guys saying certain things are sins. We don't like that. We're not going to give you any deference anymore. Okay? Let's look at the notes. Start with letter S. In verse 10, Jesus is quite honest and upfront in telling us that we will suffer and that the world will not react in love and kindness toward us. Again, we should not be surprised. We should not be surprised when people, unfriend us on Facebook because we didn't agree with their lifestyle. Another aspect of being righteous is to be Christ-like. We'll be blessed for being persecuted because we're righteous, not because we're fanatical or foolish in outrage. So that's kind of a difficulty there, is we need to be righteous, but we need to do it in a way that, again, like I said before, is according to God's will. And anger, outrage, outrage, out of control outrage. Okay, we could be disgusted. We can be outraged in that sense. Okay, but what I'm seeing sometimes is Christians who are rabid, foaming at the mouth kind of people, right? Spewing a lot of hatred. It's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to tell people they're sinners and they're wrong and what they're doing will land them in hell. But we have to do it, again, in a God-pleasing way. We have to do it in a way that will not make us look like idiots and crazy fanatics. That's not going to help. The horrible false teaching that believers only go through suffering and afflictions if they don't have enough faith is completely inconsistent with Scripture. And I've given you a bunch of references there. Feel free to look them up. This is the big lie in a lot of Christianity today. This is a big lie in the mega churches, the Joel Osteen places. This is a big lie in the Calvary chapels. This is a big lie in the Baptist churches. This is a big lie in the big popular churches that are still pulling in numbers. They're still pulling in crowds. So what they're telling people is, you behave yourself, you be good, and you be good enough, God will make you rich, happy, and prosperous, and everything, and healthy, wealthy, and wise. Okay? And if you're not, there's something wrong with you. If you're not, if you are going into bankruptcy, if you have a bad disease, if you don't live to be 104, whatever, there's something wrong with you. This is a huge lie. Huge lie. Gigantic lie. And yet, many Christian preachers are getting away with it. And people are sucking it right in. And what they do then is they make money off of these people because they say, part of you doing the right thing is sending me money. Not too many years ago, well, now a lot of years ago now, 30 some odd years ago, Oral Roberts had a great little plan. A great little plan. He would send out, you would send him $5, and he would send you a photostat copy of his hand. He did. He did this. I know he did this. Okay? And then when he comes, then
6-inch square.
oh yes,
Cotton cross.
yes I know. And you would then wait for his program to come on. And of course, in the days before cable, you only had 3 channels, and so I mean, he took up Sunday morning pretty much on one of them. And you take your photostat copy that you got right from him, signed, and you put one hand on that, and then put the other hand on the TV.
I'm laughing. I was raised listening to that.
Oh yeah, I know.
That's all I heard.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything wrong,
Yeah.
your life is going to be
Wonderful. That's
then
right.
you go to, I've been to Oral Roberts.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Have you seen the big praying hands?
oh,
Yeah.
yes. And I heard all about it. That's the way the Pentecostals are.
Yeah,
And
right.
They still preach that today.
Yep, they do. And again,
And if you have a drink or if you have a cigarette,
Yeah.
or if you go out dancing,
Yeah.
you're done.
that's right. You're over. That's right. Well, you can always go back to the revival. You can go back to the revival, and you can get revived again.
Go to a
Yep.
revival.
Go to a revival. Oh yeah. Yep. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Yep. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah.
People eat it up.
Have the same thing.
Oh yeah.
They
Yeah.
still eat it.
Yep.
And how much money? Just a little more than what you got in your pocket. You gotta go
All
out
you
and
gotta
get it.
do is pass the plate, put some money in there.
that's
and you're
right.
gonna be just
Yep. Yeah. Y'all remember Reverend Ike?
How many people did you see?
Y'all remember Reverend Ike? Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike was a black preacher back in the 60s. Big man. Big fella. Okay, and he had to chauffeur limousines, and he had pretty girls around him all the time, and he always dressed in a really neat 3-piece suit, and he carried a stick with a gold knob on it, and he had a nice hat, bowler hat, and he had all kinds of gold chains and everything like that, and he had a diamond right in the middle of his tooth. He had a big diamond in the middle of his tooth. And he used to come on TV, and he'd do a whole lot of preaching, Reverend Ike, and Reverend Ike had a saying. He said, "It is not the love of money that is the root of all evil. It is the lack of money that is the root of all evil. And you don't want me to be evil, so give me your money." And people would just go, yeah. So yeah, but anyway, we digress. Persecution is the name of the game, folks, and we have missed it for many years. The religious people were the ones who persecuted Jesus. Oh, that's something else I wanted to emphasize. Where did Jesus' worst persecution come from? It didn't come from the Romans. It didn't come from the common people.
From the temples.
It came from the temple, the Sadducees, and it came from the Pharisees. It came from the most religious people of the day. That's where it came from. The scribes, the rabbis, the temple leaders. That's where his greatest persecutions came from. We can count on the same thing. It's really not the atheists we have to worry about. It's the people who profess to be Christians that will then point us out to the authorities and say, they're in the majority, okay? The number of denominations and the population of those denominations that accept abortion on demand, for example, okay, far outnumber us. And so we can expect eventually for them to say, we represent Christianity. And those people are not part of us. And so don't give them the same breaks that you give us. And so just the day before yesterday, I got our tax thing in the mail. We get a little tax form in our mail here at the church every year. And it's a tax exemption form. And it lists the value of our property, and it lists the tax that we would owe if we paid taxes on this property. And then underneath, it's a place for you to sign for an exemption. And you sign for that exemption saying we are a religious, nonprofit, educational, etc. organization. Doesn't have the word Christian anywhere in it. But it's nonprofit, religious, educational corporation. Now, anytime the government wants to, the government can say, religious and educational do not apply to you. What religion are you? Oh, we're a Christian. No, the rest of the Christians say you're not. Well, we're Lutheran. No, well, the rest of the Lutherans say you're not. Well, we're educating. We're educational. Well, what are you educating? Well, we're educating our children that certain things are wrong, like abortion, for example. Well, no, the majority of people who use your name, Christian, they say that's fine. So we deny your exemption because you are not Christian, you are not religious, you're not educational, and you are no benefit to our society because you are causing strife in our society by dividing our society. You are not helping. And so why should we give you exemption from paying your taxes on that property? That could happen anytime. Anytime. I expect it to happen first in places like California, New York, but I expect it to happen everywhere eventually. Eventually, it'll happen everywhere. So what Jesus is saying here is going to come to pass. I guarantee you. Just look at the life of Luther as one example of this trend in church history. Again, who was Luther's biggest enemy? The Muslims were not Luther's biggest enemy. It was the Pope. That's right. And he was a Roman Catholic. That was his biggest enemy. The Pope put a price on his head. And the Roman Catholic Emperor, Holy Roman Emperor of Europe, put a price on his head. That's where his biggest enemies were. And it's the same thing in the history of the church after that. 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was not a war between Christians and Muslims. The 30 Years' War was a war between Christians and Romans, Roman Catholics, Roman religious Romans. Look at Ireland. Look at all of the years and all of the deaths there. It's not between Christians and atheists. It's between Christians, Roman Catholics, and Protestants. Or really between the Scots-Irish and the Irish-Irish. But that's another story.
More likely to repeat itself again.
Very likely could. Very likely could do that. Next point, T. As Christians, we should face persecution in a Christ-like manner. And verse 12 gives us a kind of checklist of responses. Number one, by not retaliating against our persecutors. Boy, and that's hard, isn't it? That's really hard. But did Christ do that? No, he didn't. No, he did not. You would think, he could have from the cross, right? He brought down fire and lightning and whatever, and thunder and everything on the Romans and the Jews. No, he didn't do that. He didn't do that. Retaliation is a sinful response. Now, it is a response that we have learned in this world very often works. And so it is embraced by many, many people, including a lot of Christians, who embrace the idea of retaliation. But what did God say about that? What did God say about revenge?
Vengeance is mine.
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will repay. And again, I realize that's hard. I do. I realize that's hard. But think of what the milkman said in Fiddler on the Roof. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and pretty soon the whole world will be blind and toothless. Pretty wise for a milkman. Pretty wise. Okay? Look, we have a perfect example now. We have a perfect example now, for many years actually, in the problem between the Palestinians and the Israelis. What do you see there? You see only really one thing. You see retaliation, followed by retaliation, followed by retaliation, followed by retaliation, followed by retaliation, since 1947. That's all really you see. That's their whole existence. It's retaliation for retaliation. Look at the United States right now in the Red Sea. The Iranian-backed Houthis. Okay? They launch a couple of drones. We launch 50. They put a hole in a ship. We kill 100 of them. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Look at Afghanistan. Since the days of Alexander the Great, one tribe opposed to another tribe. Retaliation, back and forth. That's why nobody, not the British Empire, not the Russians, not us, not anybody has ever been able to tame Afghanistan, ever. Because one side or the other takes one side or the other, and you get into this retaliation thing, and it never ends. And it still hasn't ended. It's still, right, Taliban are still taking out on the people that beat them back in 2001 or whatever, and then, eventually they'll lose, and then somebody else will start, then beat up on them, and so on and forth, and on and on and on, and we'll go. Look at the Hindus and the Muslims in India. Okay, up in Punjab region. Been going on since 1948. Every once in a while, they'll shoot a couple of cannon shells over there to the Punjab, to the Muslim side, and the Muslims will shoot a few cannons back. And this is in the same country. It's within the same country of India. Okay? Look at North and South Korea. Same thing. Retaliation upon retaliation upon retaliation upon retaliation upon retaliation. It just goes on and on and on and on and on, never stops. So, number one, stop the retaliation. Somebody finally has to stop. Somebody finally has to stop and trust God and say, you know what? I'm not going to retaliate. I'm going to leave it up to God. And if God lets us get a bloody nose, so be it. Somebody finally has to do that. That's the only way to stop this constant cycle, dog chasing his tail. Somebody finally has to say, no, I'm not going to do it again. But in order to do that, you got to trust God. That's why our money is a lie. We don't have trust in God. We have trust in our F-35s and our F-22s and our drones and our ICBMs and our submarines and all that stuff. That's what we have trust in. We don't have trust in God. If we really had trust in God, we wouldn't have bases all over the world. If we really had trust in God, we wouldn't be involved in every little war that just pops up somewhere. And we wouldn't be supporting one corrupt regime after another, after another, after another. And I don't know about you, but if you've ever read any history of, let's say, for example, let's take Korea. If you knew anything about the South Korean government in 1949, or yeah, I guess it was 49 or 50, if you knew anything about that government, you would say that government didn't deserve to be bailed out. No, it did not. If you knew anything about the South Vietnamese government, you would have to say that government did not deserve to be bailed out.
It was so doggone corrupt.
Oh man, it was unbelievable corrupt. If you knew anything about the Kuwaiti government back in 92 or whatever that was, you would have to say they don't deserve to be bailed out. They deserve to be overrun by anybody, including Saddam Hussein. There wasn't a nickel's worth of difference between the tyranny of Saddam Hussein and the tyranny of the rich oligarchs in Kuwait. None. Zero. Nada. But we pick and choose. Well, we're going to be on the side of this group in Nicaragua as opposed to that group. Because that group over there, well, that's commies. Okay? So we can't be on their side, of course. So let's be on this guy's side. This guy is corrupt as the price of tea in China. Well, it's about power. It's about the projection of power. And really what it's about, folks, more than anything else, is lack of trust in God. Okay? We're so afraid, right? And this is what the domino theory is all about, right? This is what the domino theory is all about. We're so afraid that if we don't get involved 5,000 miles from here and put a stop to whatever kind of aggression 5,000 miles from here, we're so afraid that if we don't do that, if we don't jump into it and get involved, that somehow or other, God is, we can't trust God to do it, even though God's in charge of history, right? That our wonderful way of life is going to be destroyed. I'm no peacenik, okay? I'm no draft dodger type. I'm no, marching. I was in the opposite camp during the Vietnam War. I was in ROTC, and we did all we could to support the war back when I was dumb. But so I'm not a peacenik or anything like that. But if people had any idea what the absolute worthlessness of a lot of the governments that we support, whether it's Dominican Republic, or again Nicaragua or Honduras, or any of those, if they had any idea at all, if they paid any attention at all, they would be in the streets all the time, not just every now and then, all the time. But again, they don't trust God any more than the politicians do. Yeah. Paranoid, yeah, right, paranoid, right. The greatest defense is we should have a 400-ship Navy as far as I'm concerned. But the greatest defense is trusting God. Let God decide. I guarantee you, folks, our Navy, our ICBMs, our missiles, our aircraft carriers aren't going to make any difference at all if God decides that this empire, the United States of America, has lasted long enough and has done whatever it is he wanted it to do. When he decides time is up, he's going to pull the plug. And no amount of jet planes and no amount of bombs and no amount of guns and no amount of anything else is going to save us. We'll go down the tubes, just like the Romans, just like the French, just like the Germans, just like the British, just like every other empire that's ever been on this face of the earth. I guarantee you. because God, that's why we call it history. It's His story. It's God's story. And God does what He pleases. And if you study history as I do, and if you look at all of the things that have happened, nobody could have ever predicted in a million years. Did anybody, even the year it happened, did anybody predict the Berlin Wall coming down? Did Dan Rather or Charles Kuralt or Ted Koppel or anybody that year, even weeks before it happened, much less the year before it happened, did anybody say that was going to happen? And that the huge empire of the United Soviet Socialist Republic would be gone in 12 months, would disappear from the face of the earth. Anybody? When Ronald Reagan said, someday the communist Russia will be on the ash heap of history, what happened? He was laughed at. He was told he was an idiot and a moron. So nobody predicted that. Nobody. Not a single solitary soul predicted that, and yet it happened. I use that as a perfect example to tell you, again, did all their ICBMs save them? Did all their tanks save them? No.
For the museums.
And are they better, by the way, are they better off now than they were then? No. They're worse off. They went from the frying pan into the fire. But again, who's in control of that? God's in control of that. One last, let me finish this. Not retaliating. 2, not holding resentment. That's even harder. Because the first is not taking action against him. The second is not thinking action against him. Resentful, bitterness, anger, hatred, revenge. That's even harder. Okay? And number 3, by rejoicing in the fact that this proves that we are God's children and understand that we have a reward in heaven. Okay. We can talk more about this if you want to next time, but otherwise we'll begin with verse 13 and letter U at the bottom of page 4. Comments, questions? Yeah. Yeah.
The real reason we were there had nothing to do with communism, saving young people, politicians that were in the drug business.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're still in it, yeah. Well, you can say the same thing for all the work, all the money we've thrown away in Colombia. Yeah.
They couldn't wait to build their factories back over the beach.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you look. That's funny. You look at your shirts now, and all your shirts will say "Made in Vietnam."
Wondering if they didn't say on the back of their shirts when they were coming back from combat.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, you guys. See you next 2 weeks from now. We'll get back at it.
How many people heard in Israel? Yeah. Who's
Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Netanyahu.
not? What did he say about
Hamas.
He said we are going to eliminate them.
Yep. Going to wipe them out. Yep.
That sure sounds like a peacemaker, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It depends. Yeah, that's true.
I guess it's one kind.
Yeah, one kind. Yeah, that's right. Yep. True enough.
$1954.
Oh yeah.
French got kicked out of the GNPN food.
Yeah. Yep.
On the troop ship.
Yep.
Ho Chi Minh was educated here.
Partly, yes, he was. Here and in Paris, of course. Yeah, that's the funny thing too. Ho Chi Minh and all those guys, Nguyen and General, what was his name? I can't think of his name. Anyway, all those guys, they're all educated in Paris. They're all educated in France. And they learned all about the French and they learned all about everything, and they went back and they used it against them. It's like my a lot of the people in college. My dad went in California, into Cal State Fullerton. He said there were all these Japanese guys that were taking classes. You know?
Ho Chi Minh went to Harvard
Yeah,
to study law.
yeah.
And then went to Paris to study politics.
Politics, right? Yeah.
See you tomorrow at church.
Oh, take the whole thing. Take the whole thing. I'm not going to hurt you. Yeah. I know. Yep, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.